I want to talk a little bit about culture. Obviously, running a country, understanding culture and high performance culture, what that looks like is important, but also right down to your culture here at the party. So you do things a bit differently here. Just would you mind sharing? We obviously chatted off air beforehand, but you've got a really cool, unique model, and I think it really devolves the power and empowers others.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, it goes back to, I don't know why, but when I was in my late teens, I wanted to try and coach a rugby team. So I coached for 7 seasons in total. And what I discovered pretty quickly is that while the players I had, no offence if any of them are watching, but were probably never going to be All Blacks, the years that I managed to create a good culture and was happy to come along, show up to training, supported each other, oftentimes these players who may be at the peak of their career already would do astonishing things on the field because they felt empowered. And we've tried to create that basic insight, or use that basic insight here at ACT. If you look at the way that most parliamentary offices are organised, it's one MP, one EA, off down a corridor with these 2 adjoining offices I call pregnant offices. There's a big office for the MP and a sort of bump on the side for the EA. And of course, what you've got is a whole lot of employment relationships and a high stress environment, often with an inexperienced employer, and one person that's asked to provide a whole lot of different services that may not be possible. So having had 6 years as a sole MP to think about these things, when I got a big caucus coming in and a lot more funding, I said to my MPs, look, you can do that if you want. You take your funding, sort it out, see how you go, or we can do something different. And what we did was we all pledged on the first day to pool our resources. And then the MPs effectively became shareholders in the Caucus Support Centre. So then our Chief of Staff, Andrew Cattels, is an extraordinary guy. He has gone and built this Caucus Support Centre. And there's a research unit. So, if you're an ACT MP, instead of having one person with 5 jobs, you can go and get really good research done by people that specialise in that. There's a comms unit. So if you want to put out a press release or you get a request from the media, we've got a couple of top comms people and then another person on digital that can do that for you. If you want to get out around the country, the outreach unit will do coherent tours and engagement. So you get out and talk to a lot of people instead of sort of wandering around in the middle of nowhere saying, who sent me here? And don't you know that no, it turns out that there's 2 Havelocks, I'm in the wrong one. So that's really important. And the other one is the admin team who quickly renamed themselves the A team.
I love it.
So they make sure that everyone's in the right place at the wrong time and the correspondence is sorted and so on. But the other thing it did, so ACT MPs get these specialised services, much higher level of support than if they just hired an EA in their own right. But they also, are in this open plan environment. I don't have an office. What it means is that our team, instead of being off down a hall with, relationship breakdowns and personal grievances and all the stuff that happens all through Parliament, our folks are out in the open in a really positive environment. And I think you've started to see that ex-MPs, people say, I don't hear enough from your MPs. Well, actually, if you think about it, it must be at least 30 or 40 MPs came in the 2020 intake. You don't hear from any of them. You hear from ours more than most.
Yeah.
And I think that reflects the fact that we created that good culture.
See, that's to me a difference that can make a difference for culture. And often with corporate CEOs, I hear the saying, hey, James, it's really lonely at the top. I say, okay, tell me about your office setup. Oh, I've got this beautiful corner office. And I say, okay, door closed? Yeah, I'm so busy. It's like, cool, that's why it's lonely. So I love that you're getting out amongst your people, rubbing shoulders, hearing conversations. That's modern leadership.
Well, it is. And it's also, it saves time if you catch things early. So it's, while it's tempting to close everyone off, chances are that you'll have to circle back and fix stuff that you weren't aware of. So I'd like to think, and of course you never really know, but I'd like to think that I'm more in touch with what's going on, because it's a real danger is that people stop telling you stuff. They think, I shouldn't bother David about that, and take all our folks aside when they start, and I just say, look, we've got a policy. I'm like a parent of teenagers. If you're in trouble, you can call me anytime. And not many of them have, but I think it's useful to at least send that message from the output that I can't help you till I know everything.
100%. And in terms of dealing with pressure, so I think we've always got an ambush. We don't know when ambushes will come, but we've always got an ambush just around the corner. It could come in the form of a pandemic, an earthquake, a disaster, economic stress. How do you respond? Have you got a way that you respond so that you're clear, you're concise, and you're calm?
So you're talking about natural or other man-made disasters that might confront New Zealand?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's really important for ACT, and it's a strength of our party, is that we do come from a clear sense of mission, and that is that we want to cut back the amount of government activity in favour of civil society and business or private enterprise activity. So we want to shift from one bucket to the other two because we think they're more efficient, and we think government has a way of being self-fulfilling, so it often grows and eclipses other areas of activity in the society. So then when something like COVID happens, having a principled conception of the role of government is really helpful. So what should government do? Well, I think the government was probably right to buy time. But once it had done that initial 7-week lockdown, it had become clear that the infection fatality rate was much lower than previously thought. It had become clear that it was going to be really challenging for the economy to survive if it was locked down for a long period. Of course, if you borrow $100 billion and pump that in, that can work, but you get inflation. And so we were saying things straight away, like the government needs to make clear rules of the game. Those rules need to be proportionate to risk. So if it's safe to go to your supermarket butcher, it's probably safe to go to your local butcher. In fact, safer, I would argue. The government should use the best possible technology and allow innovation from the private sector. If people can bring in a better test, why shouldn't they be allowed to? Unfortunately, in many, many areas, the government didn't have a clear conception of its own role. It was my way or the highway. They confiscated people's tests, having previously banned them completely. They didn't involve the GP network or pharmacies or private business in the vaccine rollout anywhere near early enough, or iwi for that matter. And as a result, things weren't anywhere near as effective or efficient as they could have been, and we paid a much higher price to save the lives that we did than we otherwise needed to. So I think having a clear philosophical mission, and in this case an understanding of the role of government and where civil society and the private sector can be more helpful, that allowed us to position, I think in quite sophisticated ways. We put out 4 different policy papers throughout the COVID pandemic, and I look at those papers now and I still stand by them. I think they were right.